Holography suggests information lives on the edge. We fear that the things we love can slip into silence and never return. Physics once seemed to nod in that direction when it pointed to a black hole and said that what crosses the event horizon is gone to us forever. Quantum rules answer with a different kind of care, and they say that information is never truly erased. Tonight, we will hold that tension softly and trace why many thinkers believe that space itself keeps a faithful ledger at its boundaries. Here is the simple idea that steadies the breath. Holographic principle means a region is fully described by information on its surrounding boundary. Imagine reality as a room whose walls are quietly covered in data that can account for everything inside. If the boundary holds the accounting, then the disappearance we fear is not erasure, but a change of address. A second law of thermodynamics says the total entropy in a closed system cannot decrease, and that principle keeps the ledger honest. The black hole information paradox starts from an everyday feeling. When we burn a book, the pages and letters vanish in front of us. Yet the ash and the glow and the warm air carry many tiny correlations that still encode what once was. That is why physicists say the information is scrambled rather than destroyed. A black hole looks harsher than a fire because nothing returns across the event horizon. Yet the deeper rule still whispers that information must be conserved. One possibility is that a horizon carries delicate patterns that encode what falls in. These patterns may be unimaginably fine and spread across the boundary like quiet ripples. The grounding is clear and calm. The consensus is that information is preserved while the exact mechanism is still being worked out by careful minds. We can rest with that and continue step by step. Why does the universe measure memory by surface, not volume? This is the counterintuition that guides our night walk. Our instincts say that a large volume should hold more detail than a thin skin. Yet the lesson that emerges from black holes is that capacity tracks area. Bekenstein-Hawking entropy ties the content of a black hole to the size of its boundary, which hints that edges are the true keepers of record. Picture the event horizon, not as a brick wall, but as a living skin. Every meeting with matter and light changes that skin by a whisper of structure. The inside may be out of reach, yet the boundary remains present to our equations and to our principles. When we speak of a ledger, we do not mean handwriting or symbols. We mean lawful correlations that conserve information so that the books of the universe balance from one moment to the next. If nothing returns, why does the book stay balanced? An event horizon acts less like a wall and more like a ledger. That sentence feels strange at first, and then gently right. The ledger idea took shape through the work of Gerard Hooft and Leonard Susskind, who argued that a boundary can carry the full description of a region. We do not need extra machinery to feel the contour of the thought. If the boundary keeps count, then the interior can be faithful to the rule that information is never destroyed. It could be that the entire universe has a vast boundary where the grand accounting lives. We let that picture float for a moment like a star very far away. The grounding line follows close behind. Extending holography from black holes to the whole cosmos is an ongoing research direction and not a settled map. While we wonder, we hold to core conservation principles. What if space is a patient archive rather than a void? Think of dropping a message into a smooth lake and watching the faintest rings move across the surface. In our physics story, the lake is the horizon, and the rings are correlations that encode the change. The message no longer sits in your hand, and it will not hop back to your boat. Yet the total story of what happened can still be stored in the rippling boundary that nature maintains. The paradox softens when we trade the word vanish for the word scramble. Scrambling means patterns spread into subtler patterns until no simple reading can bring them back. That feels like forgetting in our daily life, and it is wise to admit that feeling. Still, the rule stays. Information is conserved in the deep language of quantum theory, and the fear of absolute deletion does not match what our best principles say. If information cannot vanish, where does a black hole keep its receipts? The gentle answer is surface area. The capacity of a black hole scales with its horizon and not with its interior space. That is what Bekenstein-Hawking entropy tells us in plain words. The more area, the more potential bits to record the history of what crosses the edge, and the more the ledger can keep its balance against the second law that guides all closed systems. We will keep our boundary of care clear tonight. We are not suggesting that anyone can reach into this ledger and pull a person or a page back. We are not claiming that specific events are written in letters that we could ever read with eyes or hands. The safety line is simple. The physics claim is about conservation and lawful accounting, not about human access and not about a catalog we can browse. A universe that never forgets changes how we feel about loss. The feeling of disappearance becomes the knowledge of diffusion across many subtle links. The sight of a dark horizon becomes the idea of a quiet surface that keeps faith with what has happened. The fear in the chest loosens a little when we picture the world as a careful bookkeeper rather than a hungry eraser. We are still human, and we still grieve, and yet the cosmos may be kinder in principle than it seems in passing. One possibility is that space-time behaves like a wide code that resists losing information. The metaphor is tempting because it explains how order might be protected by structures spread across a boundary. The grounding is firm and steady. This is a helpful way to think, and not a proven picture of the world. And the second law remains the clear guide that total entropy in a closed system cannot be driven downward. In this calm frame, a horizon is part archive and part mirror for the lawful flow of information. Let us name the human tension simply and then breathe with it. We feel loss as a drop into nothing, and we feel it in our bones. Physics suggests that loss is a reshaping and a scattering of correlations, and the story does not end in deletion. That is a strange comfort because it does not undo grief, and yet it holds meaning steady at a deeper level. The night can hold both the ache and the order. We can try a mental first example to feel this. Close your eyes and picture a library with every shelf filled. Now, picture the library wrapped by a smooth shell that can change its texture by the slightest amount. The shell is where the faithful counting happens, and the shelves are where our hands would reach. In the cosmic version, we reach only with ideas and with equations, while the shell holds the right to record. What if space stores detail in faint boundary ripples? The next step is to admit that such ripples would be too small and too mixed for any recovery by us. The grounding line matters. The physics claim is not that we can replay specific histories, and not that any mind can access a ledger of lives. The claim is that the total bookkeeping follows laws that respect conservation and that keep the second law consistent. The minds who formed this path did so with courage and patience. Gerard Hooft spoke for the power of boundaries, and Leonard Susskind gave the name that stuck. Holography is a word that invites an image, and yet the heart of it is a relationship between interior and edge. We do not need a full map of the world to let the principle soothe the paradox. We only need to accept that the edge may be enough. Another gentle mystery helps us keep curiosity alive. It could be that our patch of the universe has a far boundary where some grand version of this record is kept. The grounding is careful and clear. That image is a possibility under study and not a finished understanding, and experts continue to test the idea. Let us return to the paradox and reframe it in quiet words. Classical gravity says that once you cross the horizon, you do not return. Quantum law says that no information can be fundamentally erased. The two statements pull in different directions, like tides under a moon. The holographic view offers a bridge by saying that what cannot come back through space can still be counted and conserved across a surface. Why should area outrun volume in the race for capacity? The thought can feel like a riddle because we live among rooms and fields and we trust bulk. The boundary lesson suggests that the skin knows more than the belly, and that is not how daily life feels. We do not need to force the feeling. We can simply notice that black holes obey an area rule, and that this rule resolves the fear of erasure with the law of conservation. Let the image turn slowly now. A black horizon under a dark sky looks absolute and final. Inside the mathematics, the horizon is more like a soft and careful layer that measures change with exquisite restraint. The word ledger remains helpful because a ledger is not a picture and not a replay. A ledger is a promise that nothing has been forgotten by the accounts that matter at the deepest level. We can ask a bedside question that stays kind. If the ledger is kept at the edge, then what is the interior for? The tender answer is that the interior is where processes happen and where our classical intuition still moves. The boundary keeps the faith so that the total story never breaks the second law and never breaks the rule of information conservation. Interior and boundary make a pair that balances night after night. One possibility is that what we call hidden dimensions are simply deeper layers of the way boundaries organize information. The phrase hidden dimensions sounds dramatic, yet we use it here as a soft image. The grounding follows with care. This is a metaphor to help the mind stretch, and not a claim about places we can visit. What remains firm is the conservation of information and the upward drift of entropy in a closed system. The word information can sound cold, yet it carries a gentle warmth in this context. It means that the universe does not lose track of what it allows to happen. It means that change is not annihilation. It means that the books are kept in balance by rules that do not blink. The black horizon that once felt like a mouth that eats meaning can be seen as a surface that keeps a very careful count. Could the cosmic boundary be a quiet archive rather than a barrier? Let us walk toward that scene in our minds without hurry. The sky is low and calm, and the edge of the world looks like a patient skin. Every meeting leaves a trace that is lawful and small, and spread out so no single hand can gather it. The awe is not loud and not bright, and it feels like standing near a vast library at night with the lights low and the promise of order all around. Let us breathe with a gentler example that needs no tools. Imagine a melody that passes through many instruments in a large hall. Each player changes the voice and the texture, yet the theme persists in relations between notes. No single instrument holds the whole, and yet the music is conserved in pattern. The boundary in our story is like the hall that never lets the theme vanish from the total score. What then do we bring back to the pillow? We bring the thought that endings in appearance may be transitions in accounting. We bring the thought that horizons are not hungry erasers, but careful surfaces where nature honors its own rules. We bring the thought that meaning can persist in principle even when forms dissolve. These are soft ideas, and they are enough for rest. We keep our promises about boundaries and about care. We do not speculate about direct human access to any cosmic record. We do not claim that any specific event can be recited by the universe on demand. Our claims stay inside the safety of principles that have been checked again and again. Conservation of information is the candle that lights this room of thought. Holography suggests information lives on the edge, and that suggestion eases a fear without erasing it. We can rest with that balanced feeling. We may forget so we can rest. The universe may remember so that physics can remain whole. Let us widen the picture with gentle patience. Entropy sounds like disorder, yet here it carries a different shade. It measures how many distinct stories can fit the same outward look. When we say a system has high entropy, we mean there are many fine-grained arrangements that appear the same to broad eyes. Information is the map that singles out which arrangement we truly have. The second law says that in a closed world, the number of possible stories that still fit the look tends to grow and not shrink. And that is why time feels like a river that prefers one direction. In the language of rest, this means that forgetting is a spread rather than a void. The details we could once point to become braided into many tiny links. The heat we feel from a fire is a chorus of motions that carry the old book as delicate correlations we no longer recognize. A horizon makes the chorus unreachable to us, and so the feeling of loss deepens. Yet the ledger view lowers the fear by saying that the chorus still adds up to the same total song, even if no singer can be singled out again. Consider the boundary tiles we imagined earlier. Each tile is a place where count and change can be recorded without breaking the rule of conservation. We do not need to know the precise pattern to trust the principle. What matters is the pairing between interior happenings and boundary accounting. If a thing falls in, then the surface adjusts so that the total book of nature remains balanced. When the surface grows or changes, it speaks of the capacity that keeps faith with information. This is where the counterintuition brightens. We live in rooms, and we think in volumes. Our hands learn that more room means more space to store memory. Yet the cosmos takes a quiet turn and insists that edges set the ultimate limit. The area of the horizon tells the tale more honestly than the volume behind it. That is why the phrase Bekenstein-Hawking entropy stays in our story like a small stone we can hold. When we say scramble, we can soften the image with a kitchen thought that remains mental first. Imagine stirring cream into coffee with unhurried circles. At first, you can still trace the white swirls. Then the pattern vanishes to the eye, while every drop still participates in the whole. The history did not disappear as a fact. It was dispersed into an even blend that keeps the account, but resists reversal by any gentle touch. The horizon is gentler than a wall because it negotiates between two truths. One truth is that no signal returns the way we want. The other truth is that information must be conserved. The boundary ledger is the meeting point where both truths can remain intact without tearing the page. This meeting is not an extra decoration. It is the very way the universe keeps its deeper promises. Let us name a quiet comfort that comes from this view. If reality treats boundaries as first-class places for record, then endings feel less like deletion and more like translation. A form translates into boundary correlations. An event translates into a change of surface measure. A life translates into effects that cannot be undone in the book of physics, even when the particulars pass beyond reach. The tenderness of this thought is not in rescue. It is in the sense that meaning does not drop into nothing. There is also a discipline to this comfort. We refuse false claims about recovery or access. We keep our feet on the steady ground of principles. We do not reach for stories that can be replayed. We speak only of the careful requirement that the accounting never loses track of what the world allows to occur. In that discipline, the comfort becomes honest, and rest can trust it. Return for a moment to the names that helped plant this seed. Gerard Hooft pressed the idea that boundaries can do the heavy lifting. Leonard Susskind gave the thought a name that catches light. They did not ask us to accept a miracle. They asked us to look where we had not looked before, which is the surface rather than the space. Once seen, the shift is hard to unsee, and the paradox grows quieter. As we drift toward the heart of the night, the awe gathers. Not the thunder kind, the library kind. A calm awareness that the world may never misplace what it has allowed to happen. That awareness asks for nothing from us except attention and kindness to our own limits. It suggests that rest is permitted because order does not depend on our grasp. Now the quiet turning. Could we live more gently if we trusted that meaning is carried forward in principle? Perhaps the answer is yes, because we would fear erasure a little less. This is not a promise of recovery. It is a promise that the foundation is sound and that changes settle into lawful traces rather than falling into void. With that tone, the night becomes a companion and not a test. If area sets capacity, what does that say about endings? Let us approach the macro awe with slow steps. The sky above is dark and tender. The edge of the world is near, and it does not blaze, it holds. Every interaction leaves a trace that is too fine for any hand, yet exact enough for nature. The boundary does not gossip. It keeps the account so that the story remains whole. Standing with that image, we feel a steadying hush. We place this stronger mystery with humility. It may be that space-time organizes protection of information through structures that resist loss. The grounding is steady. This is a way to think and not a measured portrait of reality. The bedrock remains the conservation of information. We can spiral gently back through the ideas to settle them. Paradox led to boundary. Boundary led to area. Area led to capacity. Capacity led to trust in conservation. Each link closes the loop that began with fear of loss and ends with a quiet acceptance of change. The night does not demand that we solve the details. It invites us to rest within the strong frame that physics provides. The ledger metaphor earns one more visit before we rest. A ledger records entries so totals remain consistent. It does not keep photographs. It does not choose favorites. It does not forget. A horizon that acts like a ledger offers the same kind of quiet assurance. It allows the interior to be wild, and yet keeps the sum of things accountable to law. If you listen closely, you may feel the shift from fear to curiosity. The unknown beyond a horizon becomes an invitation to ask better questions. What is the minimum the boundary must track? How does a small change on the surface carry the weight of an interior event? We do not need to answer tonight. It is enough to know that this is where honest inquiry lives, and that the second law helps guide the way. If this quiet clarity helps you rest, a small subscribe helps me keep this space gentle. In one breath, holography says the boundary describes the region. Bekenstein-Hawking ties capacity to area, and the second law says total entropy cannot decrease. As your eyes grow heavy, you may sleep and let the boundary image soften and remain. A quiet surface, a lawful count, a trust that nothing essential is lost to the void. The words can fade now without fear that the meaning will follow them. The universe keeps its ledger, and your breath keeps its pace. We close again with humility. The boundary view could remind us that change does not mean that meaning is erased. What looks like an ending may be a pattern passing into finer patterns on the edge of things. We may never retrieve those details, and that is all right. We may rest, knowing that physics keeps its promises while we keep our memories in the ways hearts know best.